I'm Jess. I'm from Auckland, New Zealand, and I will be going to Oxford this year to read biological sciences. By attending an institution like Oxford, what it really offers is a lot of opportunity. So things like internships, networking and different connections that would really support me in the working world. I thought I would finish high school and then pick out of either University of Auckland or University of Otago. But then I thought going overseas would actually offer me more of a challenge and something different that I really wanted to pursue. When I was opening the acceptance letter, I was really nervous and anxious at first, but when I read that I had actually gotten in, I was in insane shock for like 3 days. But of course I was really, really excited, and my mum was running around screaming, and we were all really happy at the achievement. So my team at Crimson consisted of curriculum tutors that helped me with every subject that I studied. And then also I had a UK consultant who came from Oxford and a US consultant who came from Harvard. And because they'd gone through the application process themselves, I knew that I was getting a real first-hand, well-advised experience and advice from them. I think without the help of Crimson, I wouldn't be able to manage the huge workload that comes with applying overseas. Because I had so many people that were supporting me, I was able to manage the tasks that I had to do so that I could all get it done in time. A lot of students don't really realize that they have the potential and work ethic to study overseas because it can seem quite intimidating or out of reach. But I think my biggest tip would be to work consistently and see that every test you take, every essay you write will add up, and you'll get towards your goal in the end.
Hi, I'm Ryan from Singapore. I'm a freshman at Columbia University in the city of New York. I will be majoring in either economics or computer science. I think the application process in American university is always intimidating because common application is like so complicated. There's so many elements to it. So yeah, I think Crimson definitely helped with helping me find my direction and like setting goals. So there'll be little small goals along the way and culminating in a huge application that will be ready to send to school. I think Crimson also helped me fine-tune a little bit more about my own portfolio. So yeah, I think it was helpful in having some expertise telling me what was important to put on the portfolio and what was not. If you're ever applying to an American college, I would say that don't be intimidated by the process, just take it step by step. And before you know it, you realize, I think it'll be a journey of personal discovery as well. Crimson also helped me get in touch with students who had applied to American colleges before me. So one of the people I spoke to was Walker. He was actually a senior or a junior at Harvard. And speaking to him about the entire application process definitely assuaged my fears about how intimidating the process would be. And I think it was always encouraging and inspiring to hear about his fantastic experiences he's been having in American college, and letting me know that I was doing the right process and I was doing the right thing in looking to the States as my place for higher education. I think it was not just about applying to a school, but at the same time it was an opportunity for me to kind of reflect back on some of the achievements I had over the years. And I think it's helped me focus on my goals for the future as well, and knowing what sort of career I want in the future.
Hello everybody, welcome to our webinar today on extracurriculars for US and UK uni applicants. So my name is Daryl, I'll be your host for today. So I know that people are still coming in right now, so maybe just give them a few minutes. And then in the meantime, I'm just going to give you a quick primer on how to interact with us, okay? So you can see there's going to be a chat box at the bottom of the screen, as well as a Q&A box. So you can use the Q&A box to ask us any questions, and then we'll answer them at the end of the presentation near the Q&A section. And then also use the chat box to chat with us if there's anything that you want to say, basically. So right now, actually, I want to invite all of you. Maybe in the chat box, you can put in like, any kind of dream universities that you have, as well as what you wish to study at those universities. And then we'll go ahead and send you YouTube videos for day in the life videos, so you will kind of know like what it's like to be a student studying at those universities. Yeah, so for those of you who just came in, right, please just share with us, some dream universities you have, as well as what you wish to study in the chat box below. Right. So I see there are some people, I think Cheryl saying that she wants to study psychology at Stanford. So yeah, that's actually a really, really great major to choose at Stanford University. I see Rennie who wants to go to Northwestern. Okay, great. So a lot of US hopefuls today. Yeah, for those of you who are just joining us, right? So my name is Darryl, I'll be your host for today. So please just share with us in the chat box what you wish to study, as well as any dream universities you have. And then we'll go ahead and send you day in the life videos so that you'll be able to understand what it's like to be a student studying at those universities. Right, okay, I see Oxford, Cambridge, to study economics, study molecular biology. Right, okay. So a lot of great universities, Manchester University for computer science. Yeah, so computer science is really one of the hotter courses right now. I do have someone who also says, oh, you're undecided right now. So that's completely fine. So I think the whole point is, starting on this university admissions journey is for you to find out, what's your strengths, what's your interests, and then from there you can kind of also find out what you want to major in and all that. Okay, great. Maybe right now we can move on to the next slide. So let me just give a formal introduction of myself. So my name is Darryl. I'm an academic advisor here at Crimson Education. And before joining Crimson, I had experience working in the education industry across multiple disciplines, notably also in Singapore and Indonesia. So I've impacted more than 800 families in Singapore and Asia in their higher education journeys. And I really, really believe in helping every single student maximize their potential by assessing the best education and professional opportunities in the world. Next slide, please. To give you all a quick introduction of Crimson Education. So we are a global education company, and we provide first-class tutoring and university consulting as part of a full suite offering that we offer to all our students. And this is to help them achieve their maximum educational potential. Yeah. So this slide just really wanted to share with you some of our results so far. So just very quickly, we have obtained more than 267 offers to the Ivy League, more than 600 plus offers to Oxford, Cambridge, and other top 10 UK universities, as well as more than 1,400 offers to top 50 US universities. Yeah. So very happy to introduce the speaker for today. So for today, we have Nicole, who is our US and UK admissions strategy mentor at Crimson Education. So she graduated from the University of Oxford with a Bachelor of Arts in History and Politics, and she graduated with a first-class honors. So she has guided more than 200 plus students to win admissions to top US and UK universities, such as Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, and so on. And she has 7 years of admissions consulting expertise. Yeah. So maybe Nicole, would like to say hi to everyone.
Yep, thanks so much for the introduction, Darryl. And I'll take on the presentation from here. So my name is Nicole, and I went to the University of Oxford to study history and politics. Previously, I was actually also admitted to Duke University, and I know there are a lot of you interested in US universities such as, UPenn, Northwestern, Stanford, etc. And I'll be happy to talk to you about extracurricular opportunities for these UK as well as US admissions. So they're not actually very, very different, because for activities that you do for one application, for example, for the UK, can also apply for the US. Okay, so without further ado, I'll go into today's agenda. So today's agenda, firstly, is to understand why are extracurriculars even required for applications? Secondly, how do you begin working on your extracurriculars? Thirdly, how do you optimize and challenge yourself? Fourth, how you can pivot during COVID-19, and any kind of question and answers that you have for us. Okay, so Daryl will also be sharing certain case studies with you. Hopefully that'll be exciting for you and helpful in helping you design your extracurricular path. All right, so firstly, why are extracurriculars required? When universities are primarily about academic pursuits, aren't my grades enough? So I have this question a lot from my students. What do you guys think? Why don't you answer me in the chat box? Why isn't it acceptable just for Harvard or Stanford just to take students with straight A's and full score for SATs, top in that class, and maybe also certain Olympiad awards that are only gold medal? Okay, so Allegra mentioned that social skills are needed and non-academic skills are important as well. Someone also mentioned that they need a holistic student, and yes, Rennie mentioned because almost everyone has great grades. So how do you differentiate? Right? Tricia mentioned there are hundreds of people doing great academically wise. It's most important to be an all-rounder nowadays. Well, all-rounder is a very common term that I hear when people talk about extracurriculars. Well, let's understand more about what that actually means. Does that mean that if you have good grades, you're a part of the student council and you do a sport and your leadership and you have leadership of maybe a music society? Does that mean that you're definitely an all-rounder? Does that mean that Harvard and Stanford would definitely like you? Well, let's understand that better when we go into the presentation. Okay, so thanks for participating. We're trying to make this a lot more interactive. So feel free to ask any questions and to share with us your thoughts. Okay, good. So on my grades enough. So let's see what the US application looks like, right? Before we understand whether grades are enough or whether extracurriculars are important. So how much weight do you think extracurriculars count for in the US application process? So there are academics as well, and then extracurriculars as well as Common App, essays, and interview. What do you guys think? Okay, so most of you actually think that extracurriculars count for 30% of the US application process, and that is correct, right? Some of you think it's 70%, well, not that many, well, not that much, right? Because for the US applications, they're looking at academics as well as Common App. So everything they're looking at in terms of around the similar kind of percentage, they would look at holistic review, meaning that they want to see that you're doing good grades, but also not the fact that you're just studying so hard that you don't do any kind of extracurriculars and don't have any kind of personality. Okay, so it's important to understand that for US extracurricular leadership is actually 30% of your application. And how do you develop your unique profile for US applications? So broadly, I think that there are two ways. Firstly, institutional, and secondly, innovative. So institutional refers to things that you're already doing in school. For example, any kind of school leadership positions, any kind of club leadership positions, school-centric extracurricular achievements. For example, your school might put out a sign-up sheet for joining the school theater or joining, say, an overseas immersion trip that they have over the summer. And these are things that you can sign up for. So these are considered under the institutional ones. If you're in a school with a lot of resources, that's great, because you will have a lot of institutional resources. But if you're in a school where your institutional resources are a bit limited, then you want to look at more innovative extracurriculars, right? So such as creating your own organization, joining a nationwide student magazine, setting up your own environment club, starting your own independent research, your creation, initiating an event or forum, or leading a new campaign for a cause. So obviously all these things are not meant to stress you out. It doesn't mean that you have to do all of this, right? Similar as to, not having to do all of the institutional extracurriculars that we have above. But the point is to show you all the different kind of paths that you can actually pursue, okay? So for the UK applications, similar question, how much do you think extracurriculars actually count for in the UK application process? Do you think it's the same as the US, or less, or more? Okay, so most of you actually think it's 15%. That is correct, because for the UK, they actually weigh a lot more on academics. It's very important for you to meet the minimum academic requirements before they consider your application. And all these extracurriculars and those related to the majors that you're doing, those would be important in so far as they feed into your UCAS personal statement and contributes to your interview performance. So now you know for US and the UK applications, extracurriculars are weighted slightly differently. And what does that mean for you? What does that imply for you? This means that when you're only applying to the UK, you are focusing on extracurriculars that are related to the major of your interest. Whereas if you're applying to the US, you can't just focus on the major of your interest, but focus on extracurriculars that develop other kinds of soft skills, for example, leadership, organization skills, time management skills, social skills. Okay. So what UK universities look for, firstly, is academic ability, and secondly, character traits that bolster your academic ability. Right? If you don't meet the minimum academic requirements, no amount of extracurriculars will be able to compensate for what you lack. Okay. So what does extracurriculars mean for the UK when they talk about academic extracurriculars? Just now we looked at the US ones. They seem to be, pretty much free flowing, like leadership, initiatives, campaigns, etc. apart from academic ones. For the UK extracurriculars, they want to see how you've carried out your interest in a subject beyond the classroom. Okay. So they want to see an analytical mind, a person who's methodical and able to solve problems or generate ideas confidently related to your subject. So if you're someone who really loves the sciences and outside the classroom, you read a lot of science journals, a lot of science comics, these things can count as your extracurriculars, even though they're not part of school. Okay. So UK extracurriculars for institutional and innovative wise. Institutional ones are those related to enrichment programs that you can do in school. For example, those of you in local school, there would be options for you to do the A-star attachment, where you can work with scientists and researchers at A-star. There's also a lot of Ministry of Education research programs, such as a Humanities and Social Sciences research program, which I did as well back when I was in secondary 3 as well as junior college 1. As also the Singapore Science and Engineering Fair. So all these things here are things that you can sign up for through your school, or you are selected for based on your performance in school. What can you do outside of that then? Well, firstly, there are work experiences that you can do. For those of you who are interested in law and medicine in the UK, you understand that these are professional careers. And to have a good exposure to that, it'll be good for you to have some kind of shadowing expertise so that you can learn from the current surgeons, GPs, and lawyers what their day-to-day life actually is. Secondly, you look at independent learning. So that means academic journals, online courses, field trips, or movies that you watch. So for example, for those students who are interested in law, there's a very, very popular course called Justice by Michael Sandel. It's available on Coursera and a lot of the open source learning materials. And that would be for most students like an introductory to law. Okay. And lastly would be developing relevant skills. If you're applying to engineering, for example, you want to show that you have problem solving skills, you have team working skills, and you have some technical skills. For example, applying to computer science, you want to show that you're great at math, but also that you're able to code and you have tried to experiment with coding before. Okay. So how do you begin, right? There's so many things that universities are looking for. So these are certain starting points. As we mentioned earlier, the institutional ones would be school-based extracurriculars, as well as school-based enrichment programs. But apart from these things that are very closely linked to school, there's also hobbies and interests that you have. Maybe you are learning guitar outside of school, or maybe you're playing tennis, but not in the school team, but that's something that's important to you and that's something that you do. That's counted as extracurriculars, right? Or maybe you have a cause that you're interested in. For example, you're very interested in the environment. There's no environment society in school, and in your school, maybe it's very difficult for you to set up extracurriculars. So that's okay. You can always launch an environmental club, like a youth environmental club for your community. Work with your community center to find a space for you to have club meetings, for you to send outreach to other, youth people living in the community so that they can join your environmental club, right? So these are hobbies and interests that you can develop into your extracurriculars and write in your applications. So some students might ask me, the things that I do outside of school, how does my school teacher know? How do I reflect it in your application? Well, if your school teacher doesn't know and you would like them to know, you can talk to them more about it and develop a better relationship. Secondly, there are spaces in the Common App as well as the UCAS personal statement for you to write about these extracurriculars that you do outside of school. Okay, so not to worry about that. So 3 common pitfalls. When you begin, some of you who are thinking, these schools are looking just for all-rounders. I need to do everything. I need to do all the things that good students do. Well, one of the biggest pitfalls are that you have typical extracurricular and leadership activities. Every year, there would be someone who is a student council president who happens to have good grades and also does a lot of community service. So how do you sign up for that? Secondly, applying to popular majors without unique reasons. So right now, things such as business, computer science, as well as maybe psychology are very, very popular majors. If you're applying to business, but you have no experience or no extracurriculars that show that you have the skills to do well in the business course, does that make you a strong applicant? Well, not really, right? If you are a holistic applicant, but you don't have specific skills required to your major, then that doesn't make you any more distinct than a normal applicant. For example, a lot of students would like to apply to Wharton's Business School at the undergraduate level, but maybe in their past experience, they don't have any kind of entrepreneurship, leadership, or organizational experience. So these are things that you would want to work on for your extracurriculars to show that you have these skills and you have these skill sets to thrive in school. Okay. Lastly is also the checklist syndrome, failure to think outside of the box. So a lot of you might think, as long as I have one extracurricular for leadership, one extracurricular related to academics, one for community service, and one related to academics, then I would be fine. Well, not exactly. Don't think about things as a checklist. Think about yourself first and think about the kind of skills that you want to develop, then go about designing your extracurriculars, okay? So these are the pitfalls that I hope all of you can avoid when you're thinking about your extracurriculars and what else you want to do in school or outside of school. Okay. So how do you start, right? After talking about the kind of pitfalls and normal parts of how people start, one kind of methodology that I like to impart to you is a modified Gibbs reflective cycle. So Gibbs reflective cycle starts from description of the event that happened, goes into your feelings. So thinking about how you actually feel about what had happened, evaluate and analyze what you've actually gone through before you go into a conclusion and kind of designing an action plan. When you're thinking about extracurriculars, what is helpful is for you to take stock. Understand what you've done before. Maybe, you've played piano since you were 6 years old, and right now at 16, you're taking your diploma exams. But then you realize, you don't really like piano. You don't really have a deep affinity with music. You do it because your parents want you to do, or you do it because, they think it's good for you to relax. So keep going in to understand yourself about whether the activities you do actually align with your values and the things you enjoy, right? So take stock of your activities and experiences. And secondly, think about how you feel about them. Maybe you did a pottery class with your family maybe 2 years ago, and that was something you really enjoyed. But because school is so stressful, extracurriculars are stressful, you didn't have time to actually go back to doing it. But this area of creativity is something that you want to develop. Well, then you need to take stock and realize that, okay, maybe I need to devote more free time for me to devote into creativity stuff, for example, pottery or painting or clay making or sculpting. Okay. Understand whether your performance was good or bad, how you can improve, and understand how you can make the most of your experiences when you analyze and evaluate what you've done. Okay, and think about conclusion. What could you have done? And then come up with an action plan, how you can build on existing activities. So I can give you an example of a student that I worked with very recently. So she is very, very interested in studying law, and she's very interested in family law. So we talked about, okay, any kind of experiences that, show that you will be a good lawyer in the future, or that you are interested in legal issues. We looked at her experiences and realized that, she's never done any kind of law shadowing, and this is her last year to apply. And at the same time, but she's done a lot of debating and a lot of Model UN. So from there, we build on her existing skill sets, think about what the areas that she can build on. So she's very good at debate, very good at speaking, very good at campaigning. So what can we do, right? So maybe since she's interested in family law, it would be interesting for her to read about recent family law cases in Singapore, number one. Secondly, look at family lawyers that she can intern with, secondly. Thirdly, to look at other areas of law that she might not have considered earlier. For example, criminal law or corporate law. Look at these issues that might be interesting to her, right? And then develop her extracurriculars from then on. And extracurriculars doesn't just have to refer to things that you do in a club or something that you do as part of school, but it could be something that you do on your own accord, right? For example, organizing a workshop or organizing a reading group so that other students or other friends who are interested in law would also join this reading group, okay? So I'll show you a process of starting from reflection. So do have a quick read of the student's current profile. Okay, so we see from the student's current profile, they have the institutional side, which is the school-based opportunities, as well as the innovative side, which is the personal initiatives, as well as external opportunities. So currently they're class monitors, so they have some kind of leadership. They have a lot of music involvement. They're in string orchestra, they're in choir, and they are in soprano. And then lastly, they also tutor some kind of primary school children. So for those of you who are thinking about all-roundedness, you might think this is a really all-rounded student because they have leadership, they have some kind of music involvement, and they also have some kind of community service. And also on the personal side, they do their overseas mission trip with church and also volunteers in church worship. So apart from doing well for their music in school, they actually do music in church as well. So you see that this student, seems to be very all-rounded. But if I were to ask you, what is their strongest extracurricular? Would you be able to tell me that? Maybe not. If I were to ask you, what does this student want to study? Can you tell from the extracurriculars? Maybe not as well, right? Okay, so let's understand a bit about the students' aspirations, what they want and their needs. So this student actually is really interested in science. They want to explore their interest in science and math through projects, research, and competitions. But as you can see from what they're doing currently, in their school-based opportunities as well as their personal initiatives, they're not doing anything related to science. So secondly, they're also very interested in composing their own music and directing a musical. So if you can look at what they're currently doing, they are participating in a string orchestra, but they're playing other people's music. They are very good and very technically skilled, but they haven't had a chance to express themselves through composing, express themselves creatively through creating a musical. And lastly, they also want to learn more about environmental sustainability, but they haven't done so. Right? Based on the extracurriculars, there's a lot that they can build on. And let's look at what the potential extracurriculars are there for them. So firstly, as part of their school, they can join the science research program. They can also initiate a sustainability group in school and maybe look at how the school can do better in terms of sustainability efforts, whether that may be installing solar panels in school or whether it's looking at the school's energy consumption and seeing how to decrease that. Thirdly, they can also organize science seminars and workshops. For example, some of my students have organized like a workshop where they teach students beginner level engineering. I have a workshop where they teach people, beginner level, HTML, CSS, and coding, right? And things that they can do outside school, they can apply for STEM summer schools. So there are summer schools in the US, UK, and also in Asia during the June and December holidays where you can go to develop certain interests outside the classroom. Secondly, they can also organize like a youth musical interest group, whether in school or outside in the community center, and they can put up maybe a musical in the community center where they can fundraise for that, or just to have a relaxing evening where other people in the community can join. Lastly, they can also join local campaign organizations such as SG Climate Rally, which does a lot of research and policy recommendations for sustainability. So just look at this and understand how you can take stock for yourself and how you can do your own reflection. Maybe you want to jot down right now, breakdown of what your current extracurriculars are, and you take a pen and pencil, right? What your current extracurriculars are, what kind of aspirations that you might have. And maybe you have an idea of what kind of potential extracurriculars that you might want to do. But if you don't, just write it down, definitely ask us in the Q&A section and we'll be more than happy to share with you these ideas. Okay. So after you've taken stock, understand what you want, where you are, and what you want to do next, how do you optimize and challenge yourself? So what are good extracurricular activities? So I mentioned earlier, a lot of activities can be quite stereotypical. A lot of people would have the same things. So how do you stand out? So firstly, your extracurricular really has to be a testament to your passions. You have to explore your passions through your extracurriculars, okay? Secondly, you want to use your strengths. Apply your passions to your strengths. So maybe your passion is fashion, but you've never done that before, but your strength is organizing, leadership, and time management. Maybe what you can do is to get other students who are better at creativity and designing, fashion wear, and you guys can put together like a fashion show, right? And you would use your strengths such as organizing skills to organize this event and fundraise for, an organization or for your school. Lastly, a good extracurricular activity would elevate your impact and achievement, and you would be able to do that through innovating or creating your own projects and measure the impact and mentor future leaders. So for example, maybe currently, you do a lot of science competitions. That's great. It's something that you do on an individual basis. But maybe you want to, elevate your impact. You want to help other people do well in science competitions as well. So you set up a group where, it could be like a STEM competition study group where you tutor younger students, where you make things exciting for them so that they're interested in the sciences. And that would be your extracurricular, where you can elevate your impact and show that you've achieved something beyond just doing well in competitions. You're having a community impact. Okay, so this is a framework of extracurriculars that you can look at it. They're basically, a lot of things that you can do might be fall under academic or service or active or cultural or practical. So academic would be, those science competitions that we talked about and research competitions. Service would be your community service, whether you do it as part of your IB curriculum or do it as part of a VIA in school, or values in action. Thirdly, active, this would be sports, or sports or any kind of active extracurriculars that you do, maybe jogging that you do with your family, or any kind of biking trips that you do. Fourth, cultural, that would be music, dance, theater, musicals. And lastly, practical, that would be internships that you do. Okay, so there are different levels, so high level, mid-level, and standard level. And right now I have a poll for you. What do you think counts as a high level activity? This might be tricky because some answers are very close to each other. Okay, so most of you think actually it's international and national awards. Secondly, some of you think it's actually unique initiatives and high commitment leadership. Well, that is true, but then initiatives, even if it's very unique, if it's only for 5 people, maybe that's not as high level. But if it's an initiative that is, at the national, international scale where, hundreds or thousands of people participate in, then that would be considered a high level activity. So not many of you think it's student council president or valedictorian or organizing team member of club. So that's correct. Firstly, valedictorian is not an extracurricular, it's academics. Secondly, student council president, well, every school has a student council president, correct? So maybe for student council president, depending on how heavy your involvement is, that could be a mid-level or a standard level activity. If you're an organizing team or member of clubs, that might usually fall under standard or mid-levels. Okay, so these are how I would consider our extracurriculars. So firstly, international, national awards, that would be the highest level. So if you have, international Olympiads, or if you join summer schools which are competitive at the international level, that would be something high level. Secondly, would be the mid-level ones where, you have unique initiatives or high commitment leadership. For example, being part of student council and organizing a lot of, say, events in school where you fundraise, tens of thousands of dollars, or unique initiatives, for example, organizing a sustainability group. And lastly, standard would be organizing team or member of clubs. I know I have a lot of students from United World College in Singapore, and sometimes I ask them, you have this physics society, you have this, global concern group, etc. How long do you actually spend in these clubs? And they tell me, well, it's just 1 hour lunchtime each week. Well, that's not really a high commitment activity, right? So beyond what you already do in school, you should try to think about extracurriculars where you can extend yourself beyond that 1 hour in class, okay, or 1 hour in school. Okay, so framework for extracurriculars, I know that a lot of you mentioned, they want to see soft skills, they might want to see holistic applicants with, a lot of high level achievements. Well, I would say the extracurriculars you can kind of see in 3 ways. So the I-shape would be one where you're an expert only in one thing. So basically, if you're a science student, maybe your extracurriculars are all just science. You don't play music, you don't have hobbies, you don't enjoy yourself outside of school, or you don't play sport, or don't involve yourself in any kind of leadership. Then your profile would be an I-shaped profile, so expert in sciences. Secondly, would be a generalist, capable in a lot of things, but not expert in any. I think that those who are all-rounded would probably fall into this. Okay. Lastly, would be a T-shaped profile. So capable in a lot of things and expert in one of them. So maybe just a bit of trivia. I didn't plan for this question, but why don't you answer me in the chat group? What kind of profile are you? And what kind of profile do you think is attractive to admissions officers? So I'll type the question here. Okay, so some of you think that you're T-shaped, some of you think you're generalist, some of you think that you're I-shaped. Okay, so Olivia thinks you're I-shaped. Someone mentioned generalist. I'm a generalist, but hoping to move to a T-shape. Okay, that's good, Rennie. Gavish, a lot of you mentioned that you're a T-shape. Okay, some of you guys say, I think admission officers like T-shape. I think I'm a generalist, but I'm guessing universities will be attracted to T-shaped ones. Well, why don't you tell me why do you think they'll be attracted to T-shaped ones? It seems like all of you know the answer. Why don't you share it with me? Okay, T-shapes can do a lot of things, can communicate with others. They're more flexible. Yep, I see a lot of participation. That's great. They're an expert in their passion, but is also capable of doing other things. Yep. They have tried different activities and chosen a niche area. That is great, Nikita. Yeah, great answers. So yes, generally we try to steer our students towards, building a T-shaped profile. It's great if you do a lot of things, right? Your parents have invested a lot in you, a lot in your education, a lot in your musical hobbies or artistic hobbies. And it's great that, you have a background of knowing how to play violin, playing the piano, as well as, playing squash or tennis or doing track and field. These are all great things. But you want to show people what your one or two very key strengths are. And that might be through an academic area, that could be in a community service area. So I'll give you an example of one of my students. She actually, academics-wise, she wasn't doing very well, but she had a very, very clear T-shaped profile. So she did a community service. She actually played the oboe in the school orchestra, and she was also, leadership of like the journalism club in school. But one thing that really made her stood out was her involvement in community service. So she actually organized, Cancer Awareness Day in her school, where she, I think it's called Hair for Hope, yes, and she managed to fundraise 60,000 Singapore dollars from that event. And that was her strength, right? Her academics weren't that great, and she was doing other kind of extracurriculars like music, but music was not her key strength. Her key strength was her ability to organize these large-scale fundraising events. And apart from that, she also organized the inaugural Mental Health Awareness Week in school. So recently there was Mental Health Awareness Day, and you see a lot of politicians, a lot of influencers talking about how it's important to look at mental health. She actually organized this Mental Health Day 4 years ago, back when she was in school. So she was a bit woke earlier than most students, and she realized that this was the issue. And she made it a community service project where she mentored other students on how to keep track of their mental health and to pay attention to the kind of mental health issues that they are facing, right? So for this student, she had a good T-shaped profile. And even though her grades were almost at the bottom of her class, she actually got into a top 50 US university. Okay, so framework extracurriculars, as you mentioned, sometimes your T-shape could be maybe you're part of the physics club in school. Maybe for service, like the student I mentioned earlier, she was doing a lot. So her fundraising of 60,000 would probably be a very high level event, right? For active, she does a bit of like jogging in her free time, but that's not really something that's very high level commitment. Cultural, she plays music for school, and practical, she's also done certain journalism internships. But for her strength is in community service, right? And mental health related issues. So that's one way where you can show your distinct profile. When an admission officer is looking at so many applications and they have to digest your profile in 4 minutes, and if they have to summarize you in 2 lines, they could say, okay, so Winnie from Singapore has good grades, and she does quite a few activities, but her strengths are actually in her sports, because she represents the country in track and field and cross country, and she's also played in the Asian Sports Championships before. So that would be a strength that they would want to pay attention to. Okay, so T-shape doesn't mean that you have to be squarely like the slide before, where it's only standard for all. It could be mid-level for some, and then high level for 1 or 2 of them, right? But what I'm trying to say is that you shouldn't try so hard to achieve high level for all of them, because it's quite impossible for you to be in a national team or achieve at an international for like 2 or 3 activities, right? If you do, I mean, that's great for you, but for most students, because we have only 24 hours a day and we need time to relax, it's quite impossible. So for some students, maybe for practical, they've won internships, maybe at Tesla, at SpaceX, or they have created their own business that generates, $30,000 every month. So that would be a very high level kind of practical achievement that not many students have. Okay, and then maybe at the mid-level, for academics, they also compete at school Olympiads. That would be considered at the mid-level, especially if you do win awards at the national level. And for service, maybe based on the kind of skills that they have in entrepreneurship and fundraising, they actually do donate a lot of the money to certain organizations. So that would bring their service up to the mid-levels as well. Okay, so if you can see, T-shape doesn't mean you just have to look like that, like this profile on the screen that you see now. It can also look something like that, a bit of a deformed T-shape, but there's a very clear area of niche. Okay. So for those of you who are already T-shaped profiles, great for you, right? Definitely continue developing on your niche areas and seeing other areas in which you can elevate your achievement. For those of you who are I-shaped, definitely it'll be good for you to think about how you can branch out to other activities, how you can, develop interests and hobbies that are outside your main thing. Okay. So what does your current extracurricular profile look like? For those of you who are not sure, who think you might be a generalist, you might think of moving into a T-shape, well, we can help you with that by understanding how your current extracurricular profile looks like and how you can develop certain areas to go into a T-shaped profile. Okay, so would you like to have a free consultation? I mean, Daryl and I would be happy to talk to you through what your framework of extracurriculars looks like and how we can help you develop to the profile that you want it to look like. Okay. Okay, great. So I'll now move on to the next one. So how to optimize and challenge yourself in terms of extracurriculars. So we talked about standard level activities, right? And then right now I'm showing you a list of standard level activities. So piano, violin, STEM competitions, school organized community service, or being part of school leaders. I think these are things that you would readily identify with. Maybe you have all 4 of these, or maybe friends in school would have all 4 of these, and you can always name someone who has all 4 of these. Right? Or that could be yourself. My question for you is, how do you think you would improve on your piano or violin extracurricular? How can you bring that from a standard level up to a mid-level or a high level? Definitely feel free to chat with us in the chat box and let us know your ideas on how you can elevate a standard activity from piano and violin to something else. Okay, someone mentioned, taking exams like Trinity or ABRSM, taking part in competitions. Okay, perhaps. Okay, so Cheryl mentioned making music a social cause. That is very interesting. Well, would you like to elaborate on that, Cheryl? Yep, so Ashley mentioned, take on a leadership position and, increasing time commitment. Arlene mentioned joining a masterclass or, perhaps open an online tutoring class for younger kids. Yes, underprivileged kids, exactly. Teaching younger students how to play, integrating music in STEM-related activities. That's very interesting, Mahi. To have a personal online content, yes, these are all really, really great ideas, right? So a lot of you who might be doing piano and violin, piano, maybe you're just playing it to your piano teacher, or maybe you're in a piano ensemble in school, or if you're doing violin, maybe you're part of the string orchestra. I do have a student, actually, he plays a traditional Chinese instrument, and he plays for the Chinese orchestra and goes for a lot of music competitions, and he's won the national Chinese music competition, at least like 2 or 3 times. But for him, what was really exciting for him was he actually started composing music, and not just composing traditional Chinese music. He was trying to compose like contemporary music and fuse in, a lot of pop songs and jazz music into his traditional Chinese music, right? So that's something that you can do, and you can create your own portfolio of music online, for example. Okay, so Cheryl also mentioned making music as an avenue to reach out to underprivileged. Yes, all these are great ideas. So going a step further, we can fundraise to set up a music program for an undeserved school. So maybe some of you go to really elite schools such as United World College or Tanglin Trust School or Raffles or Hwa Chong, all these really top schools. And there are so many schools in Singapore that might not have the resources or facilities that your school has. So what can you do, right? You can always work on a fundraising, like a concert, online concert maybe, to set up a music program for an undeserved school. Some of you might be in the music elective program in your schools, and other schools might not have this program. What you can do is to establish a kind of program for younger students to enjoy maybe. For a STEM project, apart from doing competitions, which a lot of you might do as part of school, or doing research projects, you could do something that has a clear applied use in society. For example, creating sensors to help disabled elderly. So one of my students, she's a triathlete, and she loves cycling really early in the morning at 5 a.m. She's already out on the streets training, usually cycling first and then swimming and running. So she actually was hit by a car before, and she had a bit of concussion, and she realized that that was an issue. So she started creating sensors on her bike so that it could notify her, whenever there was a car within like 10 meters of her bike. And she used that same technology to create sensors to help disabled elderly get around. So that's something that is how you can elevate your extracurriculars. So thirdly, if you're really great at new community service, don't just go to a village and maybe build something for them and then come home after a week and not do anything else. Maybe what you can do is initiate a coding curriculum for kindergarteners in your community. So one of my students, he loves robotics and he has a passion in working with people and also in reaching out to people, right? He's a really talkative, really extroverted student. So he actually created like a robotics and coding curriculum for kindergarteners and started piloting it in 6 kindergartens in Singapore and then now even more. Okay, so as part of student council, sometimes apart from doing things that you're meant to organize that your school wants you to organize, you can campaign for certain things like fair wages or waste reduction in your school, etc. So these are all the different ways in which you can elevate or go a step further based on your standard activities. Okay, good. So right now I will share an example of my student Anisha. I know a lot of you mentioned you're really interested in Imperial, UC Berkeley, engineering, etc. These are all great. I'll tell you about my student Anisha. I started working with her towards the end of her grade 9, and I can talk to you about how she's grown. So firstly, when I started working with her, she had a broad range of interests. So her profile was a generalist profile, right? So she did electric keyboard to grade 5. She was a fencing beginner when she did it in school. She also did sailing exploration. She was during a sailing exploration week, she was a leader. She does math competition club. She does physics interest groups. She does model United Nations. So in short, she kind of does everything. I know some of your profiles might look like this, right? But Anisha is actually really interested in sciences. Not so much model United Nations, politics or philosophy part, but more interested in sciences. So let's see how she actually develops that in grades 10 to 11. So after exploring, she wanted to consolidate and focus on certain areas. So moving from a generalist to a T-shaped profile. So she had more defined interests in engineering extracurriculars, and she was focused on community service and music. So electric keyboard, she took more exams from grade 5. She now went to grade 7. In terms of community service, right? Back here, you see that she doesn't do any community service. But then now in grades 10 to 11, she's a school community service executive group leader. She's also leader of an eco-sustainability service group in school because that was where her interest wanted to go. And then because she was so interested in STEM, she started her own personal engineering blog and also self-study A-level further maths because she was doing the IB syllabus. But for Cambridge, they actually highly recommend having further maths if you're applying for engineering. Right, so she self-studied A-level further maths for that. So it's a lot of workload. And lastly, she also did 2 independent scientific research projects with professors at universities. So as you can see here, her interests are being more defined. So you can see electric keyboard and community service as well as STEM extracurriculars. Okay, so less of the kind of all over the place and fencing and sailing. She really liked that and enjoyed that at the basic, but she didn't want to go further for those. Okay. So what did she do in her last year then after she consolidated? So JC2 and your grade 12 year is where you measure and start mentoring. So it's time for you to give back. So Anisha was planning to apply for mechanical engineering at universities. She organized like a nationwide engineering workshop, invited 3 professors, founded 2 sponsors, and trained future workshop leaders. So apart from doing things for herself and kind of developing her own knowledge, she actually thought about creating a platform to pass on that knowledge, right? And to share the love for learning and love for engineering. She also grew her personal engineering blog, which she did only for fun, to weekly viewership to 5,000 worldwide. So that's actually a lot and really would be counted as a mid to high level kind of activity. She also published a research paper with a professor and presented in a university level conference. I know it's not really possible for a lot of students to do that because sometimes your research, you only do it in your last year, then you don't have time to actually publish a paper. But if you start doing it earlier, there's possibility for you to actually publish and present it at the conferences, right? Lastly, she also continues excelling in external mathematics and science competitions. So it doesn't mean that when she does her engineering workshop or her engineering blog, she just completely doesn't do math and science. She still does her community service related things, as well as some of her electric keyboard. But right now, I just want to focus on areas in which she actually went deeper into developing that T-shaped profile. Okay. So what are their stories? What does Anisha's T-shaped profile look like? So a high level ones would be the research paper that she did and presented at a university level conference and the 2 research internships, because not many students who have done that. Mid-level would be the engineering workshop that she conducted, as well as being part of the school community service executive group leader. And standard ones would be all these other ones. Because as you know, when you write your extracurriculars for universities, your grade 9 experiences and grade 10 experiences are also important to write about. So she can write about her grade 9 involvements in fencing and sailing. Okay. So for you, when you're thinking about how you can draw up your framework of extracurriculars, you can maybe take a look at the table that we have here and draw it on, take pen and paper to kind of draw how yours would look like. Okay, so my question for you, having seen Anisha's profile, is what is her narrative? Why don't you give me your responses in the chat box? If I were to ask you to summarize her profile in 2 lines, what would that look like? Okay, someone mentioned that Anisha is definitely a very active student who does a lot of science-related projects while also contributing to the community. Yes, that would be a good, summary for a narrative. Yeah. And okay, so Alifia mentioned that Anisha is a very active student. Claire mentioned that Anisha is definitely a very high achieving student. Yes, I agree, right? And this is a high achieving student who's not just, interested in doing things like for herself, but also does things for the community, right? So every time when you're thinking of working in extracurriculars, don't just think about how can I benefit myself or how can I develop certain skills, but how can this benefit my community? So Gavish mentioned that it's really structured and target extracurriculars linked to a major. Yeah. Okay, so this is how I would, kind of summarize it. Instead of doing only science and math competitions, which a lot of students would do, Anisha has organized a science workshop to help others, set up a blog to share their knowledge, and conducted research to test the boundaries of knowing. So Anisha is a promising engineer who has taken their own initiative to make a difference and stretch their academic capabilities. So all these revealed your soft skills, your personal characteristics, right? It shows that you're not just someone who's happy just doing activities in school. And I know certain schools limit you to only do 1 or 2 extracurriculars. If you were limited yourself to that, then you won't be able to express your creativity or express your personal traits. Okay. So Anisha actually was admitted to these schools: Princeton, Berkeley, Cambridge, Imperial, also Northwestern, UIUC, UT Austin, and a few other schools. But definitely she has a very strong profile, and that helps her for both the US and the UK side. Okay. So pivoting during COVID-19, you might be wondering, Nicole, you showed Anisha's profile, but she wasn't a COVID student, right? She didn't apply during the COVID application year, right? Because she's already been admitted. Then what do we do right now since we're having COVID and there's so many extracurriculars that we can't do? Well, what do I do with my existing extracurriculars during COVID? So firstly, you show leadership by moving meetings online. I mean, a lot of you might have been doing that already. Plan ahead, do everything for your club that you can do digitally. Sometimes your school might say, there's no need for you to do extracurriculars, but you can take your own initiative to organize, extracurricular meetings on your own accord, right? So part of a sport, you can build a workout for the team to do at home, planning an event, see if you can move it online, for example, online concerts or online fundraising events, etc. Create digital archives, update websites and logos, create full plans, anything that you like to do. Lastly, upskill yourself to re-enter the circuits. So practice debate, do a model UN, work on your coding skills online. Okay, so there are a lot of things that you can do digitally or within your immediate community. So you can also find a lot of online extracurriculars. These are certain examples. There's a online model United Nations, UN volunteers, online volunteering, Translators Without Borders, or Women Who Code. And also, I recently learned, for those of you who are interested in geography, there's this thing called OpenStreetMaps, and you can contribute to OpenStreetMaps by, seeing how to improve the map based on your understanding of the locality. So that might be an interesting project that you want to do. You can also volunteer online or participate in online conferences, for example, digital hackathons. If you'd like to, participate in any upcoming hackathons, you can ask us. We have a lot of students who are organizing certain coding hackathons. Sometimes they are health hackathons, sometimes they are policy hackathons. Okay, you can always start initiatives. So understand, what is happening in COVID and what are the needs of your community, and see how you can start those initiatives. So I think we had a student who realized that, because of COVID during the circuit breaker period, a lot of, older people, they couldn't just have meals in the coffee shop, or maybe they have certain disability problems and won't be able to move, to take their doctor appointments, etc. So they started delivering food to these different underserved communities, right? So they can help, for example, organizations like soup kitchens to deliver food to people who actually need it and won't be able to really get to those places because of circuit breaker, right? So you can show curiosity by conducting your own research remotely. write about, things that you're seeing, things that you're experiencing, especially those of you who are more creative and would like to express yourself through poems, through literature. Definitely do that. You can also always learn about potential careers. So contact your dream company to see if they have remote internships that you can do. This is mostly for those who are in grade 11 and grade 12, because it's very unlikely that they would allow internships for any age lower than that. And also you can start your own personal projects, start your own app, launch a nonprofit, a startup, etc. So recently, I think during the circuit breaker, students also realized that some tutoring agencies are closed, etc. And some tutoring agencies haven't been able to pivot to online tutoring. So what they do is they organize their own tutoring sessions and put ads and mailers into your community's mailboxes, so that for those students who are interested, they could join your online tutoring sessions. Okay. So one example of our students was Humans of Coronavirus, similar to Humans of New York, where they interview citizens from different affected nations around the world to understand what the experience of coronavirus is and how the countries have been responding to the pandemic in different ways. Another one would be ventilator fundraising. So ventilators are very important for those who are suffering from breathing problems due to COVID. All right, so once you partner with actually a local artist and painted 85 pieces of work relating to coronavirus and selling these pieces of work through an online auction and using these proceeds to buy ventilators for a hospital. So think about ways in which you can be useful and using your skills and your passion to make a difference in society. Okay, another one would be hand sanitizer home production initiatives. Previously in certain countries, there was a local shortage in hand sanitizers. So some students bought the chemicals and started, assembling these packs at their own home. Okay, so you might be wondering, so about Anisha, what would she have done, if she was actually impacted by COVID-19 and she was actually applying for in a COVID year? So breaking down her activities, you can see these three categories. Non-affected activities, affected personal initiatives, and affected school activities. So some things are really non-affected because they are done remotely. For example, her personal engineering blog, publishing a research paper with a professor. She doesn't have to be at the professor's office physically. She can always just send in her drafts. And the science research internships, which she conducts remotely and weekly. All right, so that's something that's not affected at all. So let's look at the two ones that are affected. So presenting at the university level conference, obviously the conference was scrapped or moved to online. One science research internship over the summer, it was supposed to be done in the UK university, and now they can't do it, right? And nationwide engineering workshop, what can they actually do? School activities, the eco-sustainability overseas trip has been canceled because you won't be able to travel, and existing fundraising activities have been put on hold, right? So Anisha's profile would look a bit different, but this is how she can actually optimize it. So for presenting at a university level conference, it's affected. She can't do that. She can do an online presentation through a personal engineering blog. And since there are 5,000 readers, maybe some of them would be interested to hear her online webinar. Or she could also create presentation resources or tools to support other students who are keen to embark their own research and put these resources on her blog, which already has good traction. For the scientific internship, she might be able to do remote internship arrangements. Maybe the lab in the UK would allow her to do remote internship, or she could contact local researchers who are in need of assistance, or embark on a new project for existing research internship, right? Lastly, the nationwide engineering workshop, they can move it to an online workshop format, and materials can be mailed to individual participants and expand registration to more students, because now that it's online, it's not limited. You don't have to be limited to a space with only 50 people, maybe 100 people can attend. So these are ways in which Anisha can actually optimize her extracurriculars if she was applying and affected by COVID-19. Okay, for school activities, there might be limited ways, but there are still ways, right? Eco-sustainability overseas trip has been canceled, but she can try to look at local eco-sustainability organizations or initiatives that she can contribute to. Like for SG Climate Rally, maybe they need someone to help them with research or writing up policies. She can do that. Or she can do a personal experimentation with urban farming or growing her own plants, which is quite a fad nowadays. Existing fundraising activities within the school calendars, maybe she can also pivot to online fundraising, so online charity auction, or speak to teachers about areas where the school will need help for fundraising. For example, they might be involved in the calling alumni for the telethon, or supporting needy families in terms of food or job security issues. School-hosted math and science competitions have been cancelled, but they can also organize like an inter-school math and science online quiz, or take time to focus on math and science online courses, or research math and science areas of interest for pursuit at university. So these are all the things that you can do. It doesn't mean that COVID-19 happens, that you're trapped at home and mostly just doing online classes, you can't do any of your extracurriculars. There are so many ways, and these are just some of them, okay? So after, after making all these optimization changes, her profile would look a bit like this. The research paper and research internship would still be at a high level thing. Right? Mid-level would be the online mechanical engineering workshop. Things in school still don't change, right? So I would say that most things won't change. They would just move online, and you just have to be creative about it. And if you're stuck about thinking of how you can move things online or optimize your extracurriculars, definitely feel free to ask us in the Q&A section, and we'll be more than happy to share it with you. Okay, so right now I'll pass the mic on to Daryl, where he will talk a bit more about extracurricular and leadership mentoring at Crimson.
Thank you, Nicole, for the very, really frankly, excellent presentation. So I hope all of you have really learned a lot about extracurricular profile, how to really improve your profile. So I'm here really to talk to you more about how you can really benefit from Crimson services. So if you look at the extracurricular and leadership mentoring service that we have, this is really guidance for you to start your own project. So something like a high-level project that you might want to accomplish. So how this works is, you have regular meetings with the mentor, you have a personalized roadmap planning, as well as regular meetings with the education coordinator just to help run you through the kind of tasks that you need to complete in a certain amount of time. Yeah. So this can also help you with upskilling certain extracurricular skills that you might need for your particular major. So for example, if you need more help with your time management or peer leadership, you can go for the foundational skills training. Or if maybe you're more interested in like maybe art school or design school, you can have art portfolio extracurricular leadership mentoring. And we can also help with like language coaching and computer science coaching. Yeah, next slide, please. So I do have some case studies to run through with you. So this is really to illustrate, how Crimson can really help the student from what they have to how it can be improved. So we have Jordan right here, who is interested in business, interested in finance. You can look at his existing extracurricular. He is very heavily involved in violin, so that's music, right? And then he got his diploma at 14 years old, so that's really a very good kind of extracurricular to have. He's also involved in the National Orchestra. He plays sports on the badminton school team, and he participated in the GICMOE learning experience, right? So I think very notably, he's lacking two things. So firstly is leadership experience. That's something that is really lacking, as well as experience in the field of the interest that he has, either business, finance, economics. Yeah. So this is really how Crimson comes in to help the student, right? So at first we have to identify what is lacking. Once we identify what is lacking, we try and identify what are the issues or problems the student has. What are the obstacles that helps prevent the student from accomplishing what they want to accomplish, right? So the student actually hasn't done any extracurricular outside of school before. So he's firmly in the institutional kind of like barrier, and then he doesn't know how to progress on to how to be a more innovative kind of extracurricular profile, right? That's one thing. Secondly, he's also very busy because he's in national service, which is something that a lot of Singaporean males, basically all the Singaporean males have to go through. So how we helped him, right? I think firstly is guidance on his time management. So that's something that I think a lot of students need help with, because you do have time, but you do need to know how to prioritize your activities, right? So time management, logistics planning, as well as helping him with the framework for organizing this activity. So what this student eventually did with us, right, is he organized an online economics essay competition. And what he accomplished was, it's attended by more than 60 students. And he also managed to get funding and sponsorship from several tuition agencies. Yeah. Next slide, please. So I do have another case study to share with you. So this is Kawei, who is interested more in public health. So what Kawei has, is quite good extracurriculars, but as you can see, they are also quite typical. So mostly in the standard or mid-level. So student council member, dance society vice president, some service learning, some community service. So very notably, she's also lacking experience in what her interest in, which is public health, as well as any kind of like science-related research experience is also lacking all of those. Right. So this is where we really come in to help the student, right? So this student, she wants to do all this research, it's not like she doesn't want to, but she has never done it before, right? So she doesn't know where to start. That's one thing. Secondly, because she's in her A-level year, right? So that's a very, very busy year. She's concerned that, there may not be time to do it. Yeah. So how we really help her, I think firstly, to help her secure research internships, right? So this can be quite difficult for students to do, especially given a limited time. So we helped her with that. And secondly, we also gave her guidance on how to secure hospital shadowing or like even community health volunteering experiences. Yeah, so I think this really leads me to the next slide, which I really want to share with you. So this is the Crimson Research Institute, right? We call it the CRI. So this is specially only for Crimson students, right? And you do have to be qualified for this. So basically what this means, right, is that you'll be able to work with a professor, a university professor one-on-one to create your own independent research paper or research project. And I think another big advantage right now is because you don't have to actually be with the professor. All of this can be done remotely. Yeah. So we do have different kinds of professors or research mentors from different fields, right? Most of them with PhDs, most of them with a lot of years of research experience and teaching experience. So they'll be able to help you with your own independent paper, depending on what you want to do your research on. Yeah. So really a lot of different things can be in science, in humanities, in law, in computer science. And this is actually a very good way to stand out or to accomplish one of those high level kind of activities. So a great opportunity. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. So for those of you who are looking for more personalized support, right? This is where I'm going to tell you a bit more about how Crimson can help you. Yeah. So the first thing to note is that all our programs are personalized. Depending on what you need, you'll be able to tailor it to your goals, to your current age, to your interests. So we don't believe in any kind of cookie cutter approach. We'll really match it according to what you need. Secondly, because we have so many mentors around the world globally, more than 2,400 mentors, we'll be able to also find you the right mentor who we understand this can be very important. You need a really good fit, right? So we'll be able to help you with that. Thirdly, because Crimson right now, we are in more than 23 cities around the world. So we do have a very large network, and we also have a very good idea of what it's like, what the competitiveness is like internationally. So we'll also be able to benchmark you based on an international benchmark instead of just a local benchmark. Yeah. And for those of you who are parents right now over here watching us today, so within the Crimson app, we'll be able to give like monthly progress reports for parents. So they'll be able to know what's going on with the program. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I think we also want to talk a bit more. I already talked a bit about this just now, just to go a bit more in depth into the extracurricular and leadership mentoring and help we can support. So like I said earlier on, right, it's very, very important to actually prioritize your task, help you with time management, and also help you with very foundational things like communication, presentation, critical thinking. So these are all the very foundational things that we need help our students with, firstly. Secondly, for students who come to us, I mean, they do not just want to get into a good university or build a good profile. I mean, they're also concerned about career path discovery, right? So that's where we come in to help our students identify their strengths, personality type, help them to explore different areas of interest. And many a time students who come to us, they realize that, oh, actually I didn't know that I'm interested in this area. But after exploring, I realized that I may want to pivot from maybe a certain field to another field, right? And then we can also help our students have what we call interviews with our current students. Yeah. So for example, if you're interested in studying, let's say, computer science at Stanford, right? We'll be able to pair you with a current student studying in computer science in Stanford for you to have an interview session with students to find out more about, you know, what it's like to study at Stanford, what are the opportunities available, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And I think most importantly is the support for your extracurricular project. So this is really a very guided process from brainstorming all the way to planning, all the way to execution, all the way to the final project. We want to make sure that you have the best support and you will be able to leverage the resources and the networks of the entire Crimson team. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so just to give you another idea of what Crimson Network is like. So like I said earlier, right, more than 2,400 mentors from around the world. And we are looking at, if you're looking at US mentors, they come from top 25 US universities. We're talking about the UK mentors that are coming from Oxford and Cambridge. So you can see in the graphic on the right, Ariel from Brown University, Dan from MIT, Gabe from Harvard University. So it's really a very global team, but we also have very local expertise. Next slide, please. Yeah. So in this slide, I really want to give you an idea of the kind of mentors that we provide for our student. So I want to share this because it's actually very unique to Crimson. So we believe that every student should be surrounded with a team of mentors for the best support possible. So we don't believe in the approach where one mentor to one student, the mentor does everything. So for example, if you look at the core team, right, we have a strategy consultant who's really the main person in charge to help the student with the overall application. So this consultant helps with strategic advice, any kind of advice the student needs on how to choose the universities, how to choose the majors. This consultant will also help with the roadmap planning. So help the student plan from day one when they join Crimson, all the way until they apply, exactly what are the tasks that they need to complete. Right. Any kind of discovery and reflection, this is more of the mentorship program. So helping the student to discover, what they could be interested in as a career and how this ties in with what they choose to study in university. Yeah, so that's the strategy consultant. We also have the application consultant and the education coordinator. So application consultant helps the student basically with the actual application itself, including all the essays. And the educational coordinator is someone to help the student coordinate everything, just like almost like a customer service role. Yeah. And we also have a support team of mentors. So you can see these are all the supplementary services that each student may or may not need. So test prep for a student, maybe if they want to study medicine, they may need like test prep for UCAT, the BMAT. If they're thinking of going to the US, they'll need test prep for the SAT, for example. If you look at the next person is the ex-admissions officer. So this is more for students who are applying to the US. If they are thinking of going, getting admitted to a very top US university like Stanford, for example. We have Isama, who used to work as an admissions officer at Stanford, who will be able to give one-on-one personalized advice for the student. Yeah. And of course, I think also the extracurricular mentor. This is the person who is going to work very closely with the student to help them with the brainstorming, the planning, with the advice and execution of the extracurricular projects. Yeah. So this is really the whole team. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, so for those of you joining us today, right, you can see that we also have a lot of free resources that you can check out. So we do have a COVID-19 resource hub that we update quite frequently in one place. So all the COVID-19 kind of updates will be there. So maybe you can check out our website. Yeah, we also have a really good blog. So this blog really has a lot of good content. You can find out content about, maybe about the common essay questions. If you're more concerned about extracurriculars and how to really expand it during this time, during COVID-19, there'll be a lot of good articles in the blog. And we also have like admissions calculators on our website. So you can find out, really your chance of admissions at both US and UK universities. Yeah. Yeah. So these are the results. I think I shared this at the beginning of the slide, beginning of the presentation, but not everyone was there to see it. So you can see that right now we have really achieved a lot of offers to top US and UK universities. So very notably, right, 267 offers to the Ivy League, more than 600 offers to Oxford, Cambridge, and other universities in UK top 10, as well as more than 1,400 offers to top 50 US universities. Yeah. So you might be thinking, so I've told you so much about Crimson Education and how we can help, right? I think you also might need to find out, how can you really begin your journey of Crimson Education? So right now, for all the webinar attendees, we're offering a free initial consultation. This is really encourage both students and parents to join us. So this is valid only until the 31st of October. So what's going to happen is, you're going to learn even more about Crimson services, right? I think what's important is how we can personalize this for you. Secondly, we'll discuss your educational goals. Thirdly, we'll help you sort of give an assessment of your current profile, tell you your strengths, tell you your weaknesses, and then we will also personalize a program for you to help you to achieve your goals. Yeah. So after that, if everything goes well, you'll be matched with your Crimson team, and then you'll be able to take a personality test and then receive your roadmap and start with Crimson. Yeah. Next slide. So for those of you who want to have this free consultation with us, please just fill out the poll right now, and you'll also be able to click on the link. Click on the link, and then you'll be able to request for a free consultation with us. Yeah. So we do have the Q&A session coming up really shortly. Those of you who have already filled out the poll, If you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box below so that Nicole and I can answer them very shortly. Yeah, so maybe I'll just give you maybe like 1 more minute for this. Okay. Shall we move on to the Q&A session?
Sure. Okay, so I'll just take the questions. Right now we have 5 questions. I will be able to answer all of them, I believe. But if you have any, definitely still ask it now, and I have time to go through them. Okay, so someone asked, if I'm not very sure on what I want to do, where should I start from? Or if the two fields that I am interested in are very different, how should I balance them? So the student is interested in both medicine and data analytics. So that's great, right? There are actually fields that can combine both. For example, biomedical engineering, for example, or biostatistics are fields where you can do both. If you're not sure where you can start from, we definitely talk about how you can explore both extracurriculars. For example, you might want to shadow a doctor or work in a local community hospital. And at the same time, for data analytics, it depends on what your skill level is, but it will be helpful for you to, get some data science skills, get some initial coding skills, and see what kind of data analytics that you can do for healthcare. Because for these two fields, they're both very trendy fields, and there are a lot of careers that might not even be thought of right now, right? For example, that you could be a public healthcare analyst, or you could be a doctor doing a lot of research, etc. Okay. How should you balance them? I do think that if you are quite early on in your application year, for example, if you're currently a year 10 or a year 11, you can still pursue both. And then we decide whether in the UK where you're just applying to medicine, and in the US applying to bioengineering or biomedical sciences. Okay, good. So Gavesh has asked, is there a degree of expertise between standard, mid-level, and high level that you should meet to better your chance at top universities? Okay, if you're looking at Anisha's profile, like that was the profile that got into Princeton, UC Berkeley, Northwestern, right? These are all the great schools. But at the same time, she also didn't get into Stanford because she was applying as an Asian applicant, international applicant, and that makes things a lot more competitive for her. So generally at the top schools, they are looking for high-level international achievements, especially if you're applying to very competitive courses. For example, engineering sciences or computer science in Stanford, they want to see that you have more achievements at the international level because so many people are applying for those areas, right? And I would say for most of them, you want to basically show your capability of performing at a high level. Okay, even for things that you do at a standard or mid-level, they want to see that you have passion for things even outside your main interests. Okay. So someone anonymous has said, let's say my spike is under service learning, and I want to take chemical engineering university, which is completely unrelated course. How then would I present my portfolio such that it supports the course I want to take? So I'm not sure if you're applying to both at the UK or the US, or both the UK and US. If you're applying to the UK, I think it's more important for you to have a sense of what chemical engineering actually looks like and to develop the technical skills to get there. Or to read about engineering, for example, Introduction to Engineering, or taking some online courses related to engineering, or working on internships related to chemical engineering. If you're applying to the US, your spike in service learning is definitely still valid, and they would see you as an engineering aspirant who has very strong community service background. Okay?
I do have like 2 questions I want to answer really quickly, Nicole.
Sure.
So I see 2 questions. I think one question is, someone asking how much the consultations cost. So we're actually offering a free consultation, right? Valid until the 31st of October. So if you haven't yet filled out the poll, you can also click the link in the chat box, the bit.ly link, to request for a consultation. Yeah. Second question is from Jean, asking what age should we start planning for admissions to Ivy League or Oxbridge? So really for this, right, if you're looking at Ivy League or Oxbridge, they're the most competitive universities in the world. So you do want to start as soon as possible, really. Yeah. And if you look at what they ask you to submit, right, you're actually required to submit your transcripts from the last 4 years of high school. Yeah. So everything you do actually counts towards that. Yeah. So Jean, my advice is just fill out the poll, and then we can speak to you later for more personalized advice for the free consultation.
Okay, thanks, Daryl, for that. So I'll continue with the questions. So Fang Sing has asked if I'm interested in nutrition and dietetics. that is my current course that I'm studying in poly, as well as mental health regarding food. How am I able to elevate my extracurriculars to apply to UK universities? Well, it depends on what you're planning to apply for UK universities. Are you planning to apply for pharmacy? Are you planning to apply for nutritional sciences, etc.? I think that while you can, focus a lot on nutrition, I think things like mental health and food and nutrition are very closely linked. So this is an area that you can elaborate on in your personal statement, as well as work on extracurriculars related to that. For example, there are some kind of like food science competitions, or not just competitions, but food science communities, or like also non-government organizations that organize talks where they talk about nutrition to very underserved children, to tell them more about how they can look after themselves and what kind of foods that they should eat. Yeah, so these are kind of extracurriculars you can participate in. Okay, so Tyler is asking, how is remote internship done? So for the past summer, it's basically remote internships for every single company in the world almost. Usually for remote internships, it depends on whether they issue you a company laptop where you have to collect it at the company, or they send it to you, and then they'll just give you instructions on what to do. And usually your interactions with your colleagues would mostly just be via online conferences and via email. Yeah, so that's how a remote internship is done. So my husband works in Changi Airport, and so for the remote internship that Changi Airport actually did, they actually allowed them to do a project, and then at the end of their remote internship, they would be able to present to the CEO. Yeah. Okay. So Zainab is asking, what's the best way to find practical internships or work experience? Well, it depends on what you are looking for. Right, certain medicine ones, if you're interested in medicine, sometimes going to the local GP, like your community GP, that would help. But there are hospitals such as National University Hospital in Singapore, as well as like Parkway East hospitals, that offer kind of exposure to junior college students or pre-college students to do work internships. Okay. So is it a good initiative if we create a Facebook group and organize online events using the creator group? Yes, that would work. It depends on what kind of events you want to organize. But a Facebook group would be like a good place to start, right? So there are Facebook groups for a lot of interests, like people who are interested in editing OpenStreetMaps, or people who are interested in, say, political issues, or people who are interested in economics papers. There's so many Facebook groups. Why don't you check and see whether the Facebook group that you want to organize has already been set up? And then you can see if you want to join that group, and then you post more events on that, because they already have traction and already have people, right? Okay, so someone's asking, for an interest in math, what kind of extracurriculars apart from Olympiads and things you can do for UK universities? So Olympiads and competitions are definitely one way, but the other way is I had a student who actually created his own math quizzes and online kind of a fun math learning tool for his school, so younger students could actually use that. Math tutoring is one way, but another way would also be to solve math problems on your own. Like, for example, taking university level textbooks and to see what kind of math questions that you'd like to solve, right? So it's basically extending your interest through online courses or university level courses. Okay, if I go for a school service trip which dabbles in medicine, helping villages and eye checks, what level extracurricular will that be? I'm also interested in studying medicine. Well, if you're planning to apply to medicine in the UK, I think that would be something like a standard level thing. To kind of go beyond that, you might want to, if you're interested in like ophthalmology, which is the medicine related to the eye, that is one area that you can read more into. And why is that important? Why is that something that you're interested in compared to other fields of medicine, right? So you want your extracurriculars to be able to show that. Okay. What higher level extracurriculars do you recommend for medicine? Well, usually for medicine, I think that if you are able to work on your own research, or or analyze like the body of research that people have done, that would be really helpful. So right now for COVID-19, I think there's been so many research papers published over the past 6 months. Why don't you go to nature.com to read about all these papers that have been published, and you can do a literature review for that, and see if you have a professor that you can work with. Other than medicine, I would say, mostly bio and chemistry related research would be very helpful. And there used to be like a biomedical Olympiad or biomedical challenge in Singapore that students can participate in. That might be one area that you want to look into. Other than that, I think for medicine, it's not really just about the impact, but it's about the personal quality. So they want to see that you have demonstrated empathy and care in the activities that you've done. So any kind of community service where you deal directly with patients or people, that would be very helpful. Okay. What kind of extracurricular activities can someone who is interested in psychology do? Well, for psychology, previously I had a student, she didn't do that many psychology internships, but she actually volunteered at IMH, right? And she also created like a mental health awareness week thing that was related to, you know, her interest in psychology and the brain. Okay, so I think I'll leave it to, oh wait, we do have 2 more questions. So I'll answer those 2 questions and then Daryl will wrap up. So how is it possible to find about good internships or summer schools? So definitely schedule a consult. In our consult, we will talk to you about what kind of summer schools that you would be eligible to apply for and what kind of other good and competitive summer schools that our students have been to before. Okay. Is there an advantage to being a polyglot? Well, it depends on what you want to study. If you want to study psychology and linguistics, yes, like my student who got into Yale a few years ago, she actually speaks so English, Mandarin, Malay, Thai, and actually some Japanese and French. So she is very much a polyglot, and I think that, you know, made her stand out because of how she linked her linguistic learning abilities to understanding the world. Okay, so I'm done with all these questions, and Daryl will take it on from here.
Great. So thank you, Nicole, so much for your time. I think you answered so many questions. I think added a lot of value for all these attendees of the webinar today, right? So everyone, thank you so much for attending our webinar today. I hope it was really helpful, really insightful for you. So for those of you who have requested for the consultation, I look forward to speaking to you soon. Yeah. Otherwise, I'll see you all our next webinar. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.